Have you wondered why your mind always compares? Why when you see somebody smiling or succeeding or being praised, immediately there is a subtle unrest inside you, a small voice whispering that you are less or that you must try harder? And have you watched how this whisper becomes louder every day until it dominates your whole life, turning joy into jealousy and love into conflict? And Krishnamurti said, "Have you looked at yourself without comparing? Because the moment you compare, you are no longer looking, you are measuring, and measurement is the beginning of conflict." And Osho said that man has been poisoned with comparison from the very first day. The child in the house is told, "Look at your brother. He studies better, he behaves better." And slowly the child forgets his own rhythm, his own dance, his own uniqueness. He begins to live through borrowed standards. And Osho told a story that once a peacock was very sad because it could not sing like the nightingale. Every day it looked at the nightingale sitting on the branch and singing with such sweetness, and the peacock cried, feeling inferior. But one day a wise man passing by told the peacock, "Have you ever noticed that the nightingale never dances like you? It sings, but it cannot spread its feathers and create a rainbow on earth." And suddenly the peacock understood. It was carrying its own beauty, yet had become blind to it because of comparison. And Osho would say, "You are exactly like this peacock. Each of you is incomparable, yet you suffer because you compare yourself with somebody else's gift." And Krishnamurti would look into your eyes and ask, "Can you see that the very act of comparison is the beginning of sorrow? Do you see that the moment you say, 'I am less' or 'I am more,' you have created a division, and in that division there is conflict, you against another, or you against yourself. And if you watch closely in your daily life, you will see this process operating every moment. In the office, a colleague is promoted and the whole office claps, but inside you feel a wound. Not because something has been taken from you, but because you measured yourself against him. On social media, your friend posts a picture and receives hundreds of likes, and you post yours and get a few, and immediately you feel invisible, unworthy, and in that very moment joy has left you. And Osho said people are not really jealous of others. They are jealous of their own imagination, because you never really know the other's life. You never know the tears behind the smile, the loneliness behind the applause. But your mind imagines that the other is perfectly happy and you are miserable, and you suffer from this imagination more than from reality. And Krishnamurti said, comparison is the movement of thought, and thought is always rooted in the past. So when you compare, you are not living in the present. You are carrying the dead weight of yesterday. You are looking at life through the dust of memory, and thus you never see what is. And Osho would laugh, telling another story. Once a king was walking through his garden, and he saw that all the trees and flowers were sad. The oak said, "If only I was tall like the pine, I would be happy." The pine said, "If only I bore grapes like the vine, I would be fulfilled." The vine said, "If only I had flowers like the rose, I would be satisfied." And the rose said, "If only I had the strength of the oak, I would be content." And all were miserable. Then the king came to a small wild flower blooming by the path, cheerful and smiling, and he asked, "Why are you happy?" And the little flower said, "Because I knew when you planted me that you wanted a wild flower here. If you wanted an oak, you would have planted an oak. If you wanted a rose, you would have planted a rose. So I bloom happily, because I am exactly what existence wanted me to be." And Osho said, learn from this flower. Comparison is man-made. Existence knows no comparison. It simply expresses in infinite forms. And Krishnamurti said, when you compare, you deny your own flowering. You deny the reality of who you are. And this denial is the root of inner conflict. And if you see how jealousy arises, you will notice the steps. First, the mind compares. Then there is a subtle judgment. Then emotion comes, jealousy or hurt. And then you act out of that emotion, either competing fiercely in office, or fighting in a relationship, or sulking on social media. And the outer conflict is born from the inner conflict. And Krishnamurti said, can you look at this process without condemning it? Just watch it as it unfolds. Because in watching there is understanding, and in understanding there is freedom. And Osho would add, don't try to suppress comparison. Don't try to fight it. Celebrate yourself so deeply that comparison falls on its own. He said a man who dances totally does not compare his dance with another. He is too absorbed in his own joy. And this is the secret. Don't fight comparison. Live so fully that comparison disappears, and think about your work life. If you can simply do your work with love, not to defeat another but to express yourself, then promotion or no promotion becomes secondary. The joy of action itself is enough. And in relationships, if you can love without looking at others, without comparing your partner with somebody else, then love becomes pure. And on social media, if you can share simply for the joy of sharing, not for the count of likes, then suddenly a freedom arises. And Krishnamurti said, when you understand the futility of comparison, it drops away, not by effort, not by discipline, but by direct perception. And Osho said the moment you drop comparison, you will laugh, because you will realize you have been torturing yourself unnecessarily. You have been running in a race where there is no finish line, and even if you win, you lose, because winning in comparison means you have killed your joy in the process. But the man who drops comparison wins without running. He wins because he lives, and existence showers on him without measure. And have you seen how this comparison not only destroys your peace in work or relationships, but also creates a deep wound in society itself? Because the whole structure of society is built upon comparison. The rich against the poor, the powerful against the powerless, the famous against the unknown. And Krishnamurti said, society is nothing but the extension of the individual mind. And if your mind is caught in comparison, then naturally society will reflect the same poison on a larger scale. And Osho told a story of a beggar who was sitting outside the palace of a king. Every day he cursed his life, saying, "Why was I born poor while this man lives in luxury?" And one day he finally gathered courage to approach the king, and he said, "Give me a part of your wealth. It is unfair that you have everything and I have nothing." And the king laughed and said, "Come with me." And he took the beggar to the royal garden where the sun was rising in golden colors. The fragrance of flowers filled the air. The birds were singing, and the king said, "Tell me, how much of this sunrise shall I share with you? How much of this fragrance shall I divide for you?" And the beggar was silent, because he understood that there are things beyond wealth, that existence itself gives abundantly without division. But we only see wealth and power because our mind compares. And Osho said, you suffer not because you lack, but because you look at what others have. And Krishnamurti would question you, why do you accept this movement of the mind so casually? Do you see how it breeds jealousy and hatred? And if jealousy exists in your heart, how can there be love? When your partner talks kindly to another, do you immediately feel small? Do you feel hurt? Have you watched this feeling without trying to escape it? Because Krishnamurti said awareness without choice is the beginning of freedom. And when you look at jealousy directly without condemning it, without excusing it, then you see that jealousy is comparison in disguise. And once you see it fully, it begins to lose its grip. And Osho said lovers destroy their love by comparison. They constantly measure how much the other is giving, whether they are getting more or less. As if love can be measured. He said love is like the sky, no boundaries, no measurements. But we shrink it into small calculations, and then love turns bitter. And if you bring awareness to this poison, you can laugh at it, because it is so unnecessary. Existence never intended you to be a copy of someone else, and yet you insist on comparing and becoming miserable.